Number one, in multifamily buildings, suspended ceilings, unless there is a full fire protection above it, is illegal, because usually they put in a suspended ceiling to hide damage on the ceiling above it. Usually its plaster has fallen down. There's holes where they ran pipes and wires. You are against the fire code if you got a drop ceiling without first sheetrocking or repairing any holes in that upper ceiling first. So chances are you're going to take that ceiling down, you're going to find out all kinds of problems above it. So the best thing to do, have your handyman, whatever, rip out that ceiling, have your plumber and electrician repair any plumbing or electrical problems, have it drywalled, and you're done.
The woodwork, you said to leave the natural...
Natural woodwork, leave it alone, do not paint it.
Right.
Because you know why? Every time a tenant moves out, if you paint it, you're going to have to repaint it.
Right. How do you suggest to make that look good again?
Just you can clean it with a denatured alcohol, you can clean it with different types of cleaner, and then you can scuff it with steel wool and put a coat of clear polyurethane on it. And then you're done for 10 years, maybe more. All right? But if you paint it, every time somebody moves out, you got to repaint it again. It's maintenance free. If it's all natural, leave it alone. Don't paint it.
When you are looking at comps, how would you evaluate whether there was repairs needed or not needed on other comps that you don't know, whether that was figured into?
The number one thing is, if it was an REO and you're using it as a comp and you find out it was an REO, chances are you're going to be pretty close to being the same type of property. And most REOs are pretty much the same. But if it was an occupied property, somebody had done some work, had it for 25 years, is in pretty good shape, chances are the comp on that three-family is going to be way higher than the property that you're looking at that is an REO. So basically, you got to drive by the property, you got to do a little research and find out if that property you're comparing with the one you're looking to buy as an REO was also an REO. So if the price is really high on that comparable, maybe that was a rehab property and that was a property that was in good shape and it was occupied at the time of sale. So you got to watch it. If you find three properties that the value are all, let's say that one is $45,000, the second one we looked at, and the ones you're looking at are $50,000, $55,000, $60,000, chances are it's going to be the same type of damage, same type of repairs involved in those. But if you see three that are $150,000 and three that are $60,000, chances are the ones that are 60, 45, whatever, are going to be the REO properties, and then you're going to be in compatible sales.
I'm rehabbing an apartment right now. The existing linoleum is in excellent condition. It's probably been down 30 years. It has no tears, but it's really dated. It's gold. It's geometric. It's crazy. So I can either just leave it as is, and it's all because the apartment's already rented.
Okay.
I know what you're going to say.
No, you don't.
But here's my thing. In about 3 years, when she moves out, I know it's an odd situation, but 2.5 years, I'd like to rehab that kitchen. My initial intention was to pull up the flooring or leave it if it's only one layer and put down that, I don't know what it's called from Home Depot, but it's the big triangle.
So the question is, when do you replace, so for everybody, the question is, when do you replace floors?
Okay, to everybody here, she's got a kitchen floor. It's in perfect condition. There's no rips, there's no tears, there's no buckling. It's in perfect condition like this floor. So her question is, does she rip it all out and put a new floor, or is she going to put a parquet floor, a floating floor?
Individual square tile.
Floating? Or are they glued?
Well, you say that they're glued, plus they'd have to be glued down.
Yes.
So then when I get to redo the kitchen, I've got 2 layers, then I'm going to have to pull the whole thing up, so now I got to pay for extra labor to get the look I want.
My answer to your question is, where are you located?
Wallingford.
You call a company by the name of Valley Floor out of Naugatuck?
Dolly floor?
Valley Floor. They are a vendor for CT REIA. They're in the newsletter. He will come in. He'll do you a one-piece vinyl floor, and he's got several different qualities. The higher the quality, the more it's going to cost you. But he can put a vinyl floor on top of your existing vinyl floor, and it's not glued down. They only glue the perimeter. And if you ever need to replace it again, All you can do is pick that up and go right back over the one that's there now.
And so if it's only one layer,
One layer on top and you can peel it up later. It's not glued down.
Yeah, Colleen, and then Tracy.
How do you deal with the mold in the basement as well as in the windows? Should you get the mold on the windows as well as in the basement?
Well, number one is you can get a mold remediation company that'll come in and do it for you. I usually just put a little bit of bleach and water and I spray it and let it set and then we just brush it off.
I think it comes back, I think, if you do that.
In the basement, then if it comes back, it's because you got a moisture problem. So what you got to do is solve the moisture problem first, and then you won't have the mold. Basically, if it's a single-family home and it's really moist in the basement is finished, in May, when it starts to turn warm outside, you got to run a dehumidifier. That's the only way you're going to solve the moisture and the mold problem in the basement in the summer. Got to have a dehumidifier. I have several basements. I run dehumidifiers from May through November. My Vermont property, I run the humidifier from May until November because it gets moist in the basement in the summer from condensation, from the heat outside, the cold basement. My contractors I've been dealing with for a long time, and that's why I keep telling you, if you have a good contractor, don't beat him to death, all right? He's got to make a profit, stay in business. It's not always the cheapest people that are going to give you the best prices, not always the cheapest people are going to give you the best quality or the best service.
Right, but you're not paying them up front, I'm saying.
I do not put one dime up front with any of my contractors. I don't care if it's a $500 job or a $50,000 job. My contractors come in on the job, do the job. When they're done, they get paid in full.
Who buys the supplies?
They do. And if they don't want to do it, I don't use them.
You actually have a reputation. What if you're starting out and
You may have to pay a third up front, but be very careful. Make sure that if you're going to pay somebody up front, make sure that you get good background checks on those people. Make sure you've got references. Talk to people they've done work for. It's very important to check the credentials of your contractors. Because if you don't, you're going to give some money up front. There's a lot of contractors up there take a deposit from you, buy the material to do the job that they contracted 3 months ago if they haven't started yet. Then you're on the waiting list for 3 to 6 months. Maybe you're going to get some work done.
So I have a suggestion on this. I'm just picked up a new contractor who I really like. One, he's easy to deal with. Number two, he's very specific. He creates his own scope of work, and we went through the prices line item by line item. If we had to change it, we changed it in from a referral from another rehabber, a rehabbing general contractor. So you definitely want to check them out back and forth. You may just want to pay them for 1 day of work. Let them do 1 day. Say, listen, you get 1 day of work done, I'll pay you. Then they know that you're going to pay them. They're only out 1 day in case you don't, but you're going to pay them. But I can't say this enough. There are too many rehabbers out there that have been trained by people to keep a contractor tied down. These contractors have to make a living, but the biggest issue why they think they're owed more and why you think they're owed less is because you do a lot of things over the phone. So every time you do a change order, make sure you put it down in writing. Send it by email. Now most people have texts, so you actually have a text if you have to at least do a text back and forth. So everybody's clear and above board of exactly what you need to have done. That way you'll build that rapport with people.
So you need to get a basic contract, and you need to address some of the issues that you have with it, but don't tie them down to a contract where they can't even turn around backwards and they get charged fines and penalties because you're not going to have anybody working for you. You're just not. For me, I may do 2 or 3 jobs in 6 months. So they're not going to be working for me full time. So I'm not going to tie them down to that kind of a contract. My contracts with all my contractors, and everybody may say, well, we don't do that. There's a handshake. That's it. I agree to a price. The guy does the job, and I pay him. That simple. That simple.
But on the other hand, you do, because as you're building a rapport with people, you need to make sure the work gets done in a timely fashion. You may need to get work done for the tenant to move in there. So you definitely need to manage it and keep them very tight. You have to, I know that you have a time schedule, and that's one of the issues on this whole thing. So how would somebody who's brand new starting this know that their contractor is going to get it done by the time their tenant moves in?
And that's by checking the references that the contractor gives you.
Okay.
Get minimum 3 references of people that he's done work for, and you go talk to the people. They're going to tell you, was the guy on time? Did he do quality work? Did he get the material on the job? He said he was going to be done on Wednesday. Was he done on Wednesday? And that's how you're going to find out. I just used a new contractor about a month ago. Never met him before. I got his name through a friend that was a contractor in Manchester. I got prices for this job of $18,000 to do this job on a two-family house, a front porch. I ended up hiring a contractor that was suggested from another contractor that did work for me. He was too busy to do my work. This guy came in and gave me a price, and I sat down and talked to him. I says, now, are you sure you can do it for that? He says, yes. But he says, I'm a small contractor. I can't fund the materials. I said, you give me a list of your materials. I'll have it delivered on the job. We'll just deduct it from your price. He says, I'm fine with that. No contract, no. I shook hands with him. I says, when are you going to be there? He said, I'm going to be there Monday. I says, okay. I called Joanne at Lowe's. I gave her the list of materials. Monday morning, 7 o'clock, Lowe's dropped the lumber. 7:30, he was there with his guy. And a day and a half later, the job was done. And the price went from $18,000 down to $2,500. $2,500 to rebuild 2 front porches.
What was his name?
That number?
I'll talk to you about that. The guy did a beautiful job, looks nice, and it did the same exact thing, but he had different ideas about doing this job versus some of the other contractors that I interviewed and got prices from. And his ideas were basically the same scope of work, just another way to look at it. Did the same job, the job is quality, it looks good, and it completed the job for $2,500. It was $900 worth of material. And I deducted it from him and paid him the day he was done.
By the way, here's some suggestions on financing the rehab. So Home Depot offers at least 6 months of financing on their consumer credit card for any purchases $299 and above. Right now, just now, I got 18 months. Was it? Yeah. 18 months of financing. Lowe's, I just bought appliances from them. They offered 18 months. Apparently, they don't do that all the time. But you want to find out how can you extenuate the financing. So instead of going to a hard money lender, you don't have to use the hard money for the materials because you have that.
Guys, you see this? Home Depot commercial account, Lowe's commercial account. If you're going to be serious about this, open accounts with Lowe's and Home Depot. Now, when I go to Lowe's with this card, it's on automatic 5% right off the top. If I buy an order of $2,500 or more, I get another 10% off. I get free delivery. All my appliances cost me $20. I don't care if they're in Manchester, a mile from the store, or down in Stamford, 100 miles from the store. It don't matter. It's $20 for the delivery for my appliances. That's for the whole address. If there's 10, it don't matter. If there's 1, it don't matter. Still 20 bucks. Number 2, Home Depot. You go to Home Depot with this card and you buy an order and you walk to the cash register and you look at the cashier and you say match Lowe's. And you get an automatic 5% right off your card at the register. Yes?
That's what I was going to say. You have to show them that you have a Lowe's card as well.
No, I haven't had to do that. Some places, some stores will require you to show the Lowe's account card. I refuse to do that. I tell them, well, I'm just going to go down the street and buy it from Lowe's. So then they waiver that requirement.
I was in the military, they give 10% off in both places.
And if you're in the military or you're past military, you show your military ID, I think they give you 10% off, right?
So what he's saying is,
The discount is bigger than 5%.
yeah. So what he's saying is, if you're a veteran, the consumer card, they'll get 10% off. The consumer card, for some reason, gives you a lot more flexible financing than anything else does. One more thing, I'd recommend that you sign up to be a home improvement contractor with the state of Connecticut. It costs, I think, $250 a year. There's no test, there's a questionnaire. The advantage to that is that now you can get contractor pricing anywhere. So if you need materials from ABC, roofing, or any of these other places, you can get the contractor pricing as a home improvement contractor.
And you can get your commercial accounts with them.
Yeah, exactly. The question is, what do you buy? Why would he buy the materials for his contractor? So go ahead.
If you got a licensed contractor, he's got all the necessary licenses and insurances, it don't matter. So whoever's telling you that, and I know who's telling you that, it don't apply, all right? It don't apply. You can buy, I have a contractor that I know that does multi-million-dollar projects, and he hires all these subcontractors, and he provides the material for everybody.
They can't hear you. Sorry, can you speak all over the
A
place?
friend of mine's a contractor, he builds multi-million-dollar projects sometimes 20 or 30 homes on one location. He provides every single bit of material for his jobs, but he only hires licensed, insured contractors. As long as the contractor's got workman's comp, he's got its liability insurances, you're covered. No, absolutely not. Not as far as I know. Check with your attorney as usual
And your accountant.
and your accountant, but I've never heard of that.
But if somebody's got their own company, I mean, that's the way I work too. If they have their own company and you're buying the materials, they're obviously not your own employee.
So basically, they're doing labor for you, sub-labor.
Lou, you mentioned if a person is purchasing more than $2,500, so what's the time frame?
In one order.
One order.
25. If you buy $2,500 in one order, charge it to your commercial account at Lowe's. They give you an extra 10% off.
2,500 or more, it's a bid room, so they'll send it out for bid. So if you're gonna do a big rehab project, so like right now, I'm doing a lot of odds and ends, upgrades to a lot of my apartments all at once. Individual, each apartment is hardly anything at all, but when you add it all up, it came to a considerable amount of money. So try to plan those projects all at once, even if you have to buy additional materials at once, you store it someplace, but you're getting that extra financing, you're getting that 5, 10, 15% off. It's a good idea. All right, what other questions do we have out here? See, the question is, can you find a reference material to find out basic codes that you should be aware of?
Okay, you can get a copy of the building codes for the state of Connecticut. I'm sure the Department of Licensing would have that available, or you might be able to find it online. You can get a copy of the state fire code. I don't know if you wanted to, because it would probably have to be hauled over to your house by a pickup truck. All right, but you can refer to it. I'm sure you can probably get the specific codes from the state fire marshal's office or your local fire department. Now, when I go through an inspection with the fire department, the local fire marshal, when they give me an article to do, I ask them to give me the complete article. Section 931-4 doesn't mean anything to me. I want the article number, and then I want all the writing of what it actually is. And then when you know that, then you know what they're asking for. Otherwise than that, it's lingo. Code numbers don't mean nothing to me. All right?
Lou,
Yes.
The question came from over here. How do you know whether something's asbestos, and do you have to remove this asbestos, and how does that work?
Like in the older homes.
Like in where?
Like older homes. Like when you're walking through a basement, how do you?
Well, the question, did everybody hear the question? How do you deal with asbestos? How do you know if it's asbestos or not? If you don't have the ability to identify it yourself, you call somebody that can.
Okay.
All right? I could tell you if it's asbestos or not, except if it's in vinyl tile. Tile and floor materials is very hard to tell if it's asbestos or not. If it was installed within the past 15 years, chances are it isn't, because within the last 15 years, they've eliminated asbestos in flooring and a lot of different products now. So your chances of having it, if it's been installed prior to 15 years ago, it could be. And get it tested. Take one tile out and take it down to a testing laboratory that does that. And you can find them on the internet. They'll tell you, who does the testing. And they'll gladly test it for you for a very minimal amount of cost. If you got asbestos siding, the easiest thing to deal with is asbestos siding. If you got a broken shingle, you can buy the replacement shingles now, and they're made out of fiberglass and cement. They look exactly identical to the originals. You basically take a pair of side cutters, you cut the heads off the nails, you slide the old shingle out, you pull the two balance of the nails out, pop the new shingle in, put 2 nails and paint it, you're done. Simplest form of repair is those asbestos siding. Asbestos siding is not a problem about asbestos given off to the atmosphere or anything. Perfectly all right until you rip it all off, start breaking it off and peeling it off. What happens is asbestos on siding does not become a problem unless you have to rehab that property or tear it down. Then you got to address the issue. I had a 2-family we tore down about 12 years ago. At the time, it cost me $2,200 to have the asbestos siding removed and disposed of. And it was done by an asbestos abatement company.
While we're on the same lines, let's talk about lead, because there's some new EPA laws that went into effect, and what do they need to be worried about?
Okay, if you're going to do more, I believe, than a 4 square foot area of ripping out any material that contains lead, you have to follow a bunch of rules and regulations, meaning, you got to cordon it off, you got to have this special vacuum cleaner to vacuum, You got to do the lead test and the lead wipes after you're done. So there's a course offered by several companies here in Connecticut. One's out of Middletown, and it costs, I think about, what, $350? It's maybe around $300, $350 to take the course. It's an 8-hour course. They'll teach you how to do lead abatement safely and healthy-wise. If you don't do that, they can fine you. It's a regulation that came in about a year ago.
One last
And it's important if you're a plumber, a painter, any kind of contractor, if you're a homeowner, it's important to know how to do it correctly without contaminating everything around you. Now, what I find is a lot of the multifamilies' basic lead problem is in the windows and on your porches, mainly exterior porches, because they get the weather and they start deteriorating and they start causing problems. What I found the easiest way to deal with the porches is you have the porch sided. Basically, they cover up what's painted with lead, so you're encapsulating it. So that's basically the way to deal with it. And with the windows, it's basically putting in replacement windows because the lead is in the window sash that's been painted 100 years ago. And 99% of your lead contamination comes from old windows.
Mine's on underground oil tanks.
Underground oil tanks.
You know, if you're looking at an REO as is property, you just move on to the next one, or how do you find out from the fire station, or how do you determine if you, sometimes you can tell it had one underground, and do you research that before you buy
So
a
the
house?
question is, if it's an underground oil tank, how do you find out whether it's been removed already? And especially if it's an REO property, you can't talk to the owner. How do you handle that?
To find out if there's an underground oil tank and it's been removed, you usually contact your fire marshal's office in your town. They're the ones that are responsible for inspecting the removal of that tank and certifying that it was removed properly and no contamination. Usually, not always, depending on the owner. The owner's an excavator, he may just pull it out himself and there's no really way of knowing.
So if there's still an underground oil tank.
If there's still an underground oil tank, there's several, and you're buying an REO property, the bank is going to sell it to you as is where it is. It's your responsibility to accept it with the oil tank in the ground, or get permission to have a tank removal company, go in and do some soil borings around the tank to check and see if there's any contamination. You can determine at that point whether you want to go through with it or not. If all the soil borings come negative and there's no contamination around the perimeter of the tank, chances are you're going to be all right. You can just have it removed and you're good. There's no state law in Connecticut or federal law that mandates removal of underground oil tanks unless they're 1,000 gallons or more. No such regulation. What happens is the banks are requiring them to be removed, and they won't finance them unless they're removed. A lot of the insurance companies won't insure the property if it's got an in-ground tank. So what's governing the removal of in-ground oil tanks under 1,000 gallons is banks and insurance companies. No state law says you have to remove it unless it's 1,000 gallons or more.
And you're going to have to do that same kind of due diligence with wells and septics.
You got to do your own testing.
All those things can cost you a whole lot of money and totally ruin your rehab budget if any of those things are not working properly. So those are 3 things you really need to pay attention to.
One thing, when you're buying an REO property, the only thing the bank selling that property guarantees to you that they're going to give you a warranty deed. Most of the time. Occasionally, they'll just give you a deed. That's when you need to make sure that you have your title insurance.
Tracy, you had a question?
Yeah, with the underground tanks, where are we researching, like, how do you, there's no obvious piping coming out of the ground. How are we researching if that one ever potentially happened?
Like I say, you check with the fire marshal. Check with the fire marshal because they're responsible to inspect the removal of a tank. They usually have it on file. The permit was pulled and it was removed. Otherwise than that, if there's no permit, no view, it's really hard unless you have a tank company come in. They can usually scan the property. They have an X-ray or whatever they use to scan the property to see if there's any underground tanks in the general areas that they would normally be put in. If the tank is empty, it's perfectly fine. If there's oil in it, have the oil pumped out, then a couple, 3, 4 bags of that floor dry inside the tank to absorb any residue that's left, and you leave it alone, as long as it ain't leaking.
The gas companies have grants to switch you over from oil to gas. Obviously, they love when you do that. As I mentioned earlier, the audits, the $75 audits for people to come in. I'm not clear whether they work for industrial properties, but it's worth having them come in, see if they see things. Maybe they have some kind of coupons. Maybe there's some tax benefits to save energy. I would definitely call, your local utilities. You may delay some of the renovation you do until you move a tenant in there who's a lower income tenant, because you get those grants and it'll save you a whole lot of money. Plus, you're really helping the people that are living there, because every dollar they're not spending on heat, they can give to you in your rent. So.
Absolutely. Anything you do to make that unit more heat efficient, more utility efficient, benefits you. Number one, you got to remember, tenant's going to pay for the heat before they pay your rent. So if they can't afford to pay for the heat, they're not going to be able to afford to pay you the rent. So I hear a lot of landlords say, oh, I'm not insulating, I'm not changing windows, I'm not updating my heating system. And I say, why not? Well, I'm not paying for utilities. And the first question I pose them, if they can't pay the utility, they sure as hell ain't going to pay you the rent. So anything you do to make it a little better for them is well worth it. We got a 4-family, and up until about 5 years ago, every single spring I had an empty building. And I couldn't figure out why. Until one day, the one guy that stayed, it's a 5-unit, there was always one guy who's been there 41 years. He said, when are you going to do something? This electric heat is killing me. I said, why? He says, I'm paying $400 a month for a 3-room apartment in the cold part of the season. So I talked to Jim from Monitor Heating, and you see him at our meetings with these little space saver heaters, direct vented. I had Jim go and take a look at the property. He gave me a price to do the property. It was like $2 grand, $2,500 per unit to put these heaters in. We had them done. We haven't had a vacancy since, and it's been 5 years. And the first heat bill went from $400 down to $75. Wow. And they had heat, and they weren't cold. So sometimes it's just a matter of thinking or asking a couple of questions. Monitor heaters. Pardon? They're gas. Gas or oil?
And they go in the basement.
No, they go in the unit. Very, very, very good way to do a conversion on a smaller building with 3 or 4 room units.
The other thing I did is there's a product out there called HydroSil, and which is like the electric baseboard heat, and I put it in because one of my units is all electric, so we couldn't put gas in. And those kind of same thing. They thanked me because it brought the heat way back down. So.
They're like Victorian styles. They used to paint them multiple colors. All right, and that just adds a little bit to the detail. All right, it brings out the detail. The roof on this house I would estimate to be 10 years old. The reason I estimate that is 99.99% of your roofers today will not do this type of roof because they have to snap lines and keep every row in line so it looks good. Now they do architectural like that house over that brick house where it don't matter how you put it on, it still looks good. They got a drain pipe there, it's sloped down so the water runs down. The gutter up here on the 2nd floor porch, they got a garden in it. Yeah, if you'll notice, the grade looks pretty good on this. A little bit low along here, but they put a window trough there to catch so no water goes into the window. But the grade is good, it's sloping to the rear. Basically, the new rules and regulations, you got to put plastic out 10 feet from the building. And you got to pick everything up and keep it encapsulated. You can't leave anything on the ground.
So this would have a hard time with FHA financing, correct?
It could. It could. Yes.
Because of the lead.
Yeah, it could. It could. That would have to be addressed.
The painting.
That would have to be addressed. Yeah. Okay, we're going to go inside. You got a crack walkway here. This would not pass any kind of federal funding or back financing, FHA, CHFA. You'd have to replace the slab or maybe both of them. But if you're selling it to a conventional person, wouldn't make any difference. He would be responsible, but ultimately the owner's responsible.
What is the cost of something?
You're looking at about $1,500 to replace those 2 slabs, because they got jackhammer, get rid of the old cement. They got to put wire mesh in there, and then they got to pour it. This could be repaired. This step could be repaired. Yeah, I'm surprised they did a rehab. They did. You know, when you do a rehab, the most important thing is curb appeal and first appearance. So when somebody comes to look at this property, the porch hasn't been painted. That's the first thing that should be done. Yeah, and you got some peel and paint up here on the soffit here too. Okay guys, if you look at the ceramic tile floor in this particular tile you can buy from Home Depot or Lowe's. It usually runs, it depends on what time you buy it, when they have a special or not, but it doesn't run more than $1 a square foot for this kind of a tile. It's about 77 cents on average. The granite countertops, there was a time 5 years ago it would cost you $100, $130 a square foot. Today you can buy granite like this for $29 a square foot. So sometimes if you're going to do a rehab and you're going to sell it like in this condition, then you want to give it that little bit extra punch, then you spend a few extra dollars and go granite. It's going to be a selling point of the house. Same way, if you saw the bathroom, beautiful job. The appliances are high-end stainless. They haven't put the refrigerator in yet. They should, because there was a bad drywall job behind the refrigerator, which you can see now, and it kind of gives you a question, what's the rest of the workmanship like?
Exactly.
So that should be covered, at least, or they should have just put some tile there. I would say this is probably $10,000 kitchen. The cabinets are, it looks like they're cherry or oak, stained oak. The hardwood floors, these are red oak, and you'll notice they've been refinished. But you'll also notice that there's some stains in them. The reason there's stains, oak floors and maple floors are a hardwood that when they're cured and dry, there's no sap in the wood. So anything that gets, if the floor gets wet or there's a pet that used the bathroom and it stays there for a while, the pet stain will go right straight through the wood. So you could sand this floor all the way down to the subfloor. That won't disappear until you hit the subfloor. The stain goes straight through the wood all the way to the subfloor. So no matter how much you sand this, you're not going to get that black spot out of there. It's part of the wood now. If this was a pine floor or a pine, a cedar, or a fir floor, the stains would not be there. You could sand them just 1/8 of an inch and the stains would be gone. Maple and oak will go right straight through. Any solid hard wood, it'll go through. Softwoods have got sap in it, and the sap stays in the wood, so the stain can't penetrate. Only surface. But hardwood, it goes right straight through. So if you get a real big bad stain, you either got to put carpeting over it, or sand it and varnish it the way it is, or you stain the floor a darker color so that the stain blends. I think $159 is a good deal.
Well,
I
you
do.
don't have to do nothing. You just have to move in.
Oh,
First time home buyer.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, for somebody, you know, with one
Well, most of these houses are usually actually first-time home buyers, especially Capes.
I'm pretty much a newbie. I own one, got a couple under contract, knocking on wood that they go somewhere soon. I thought it was great. This is extremely educational. I learned a whole lot. It's great just to be able to walk around with folks who really know what they're talking about. To hear Lou is priceless. And to just be able to walk and bounce ideas off of the other folks who are here is very valuable as well. I'm going to be a flipper of single-family homes. I have attended a couple of boot camps in the past, and I'd say this one day is just as valuable probably as any of those boot camps that I went to. Learned just as much. The hands-on is huge.
I had a really good time other than freezing my toes off. It was very cold today. But the houses we saw were an education in themselves. Lou did point out some things that I didn't know. I've been a real estate agent for 27 years, so I thought I, was comfortable with a lot of things that he found, but there were definitely new things that I did not know as far as an investor. But now that I'm interested in doing a flip myself, I have a newfound respect for what investors need to do.
The tour was fantastic. It was everything I imagined and more. I learned a lot. I took home so much. It's unbelievable. It was fantastic. It was really fantastic. I had a ball, and like I said, we learned so much. I can't even tell you how much stuff I learned. The coaches are unreal. It's just they walk right with you, and you learn a lot. You take a lot in, and I took a lot in. I love the coaching program because I'm one of those that unless you push me, I'm just going to sit there and say, okay, maybe I should do this, but with them, you just call, make an appointment, and they walk right with you, hand in hand. And it really is great.
Yeah!